Welcome to the Lux Files, a podcast for occultists about occultists. I'm your host, Sean, and I hope you enjoy this episode. Be sure to subscribe to the Lux Files wherever you get your podcasts to stay up to date on all the new episodes. Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 27 of the Lux Files. I am here with author and warlock Storm Faerywolf. Hello, hello.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you for coming. No, it's great. I'm happy to have you. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's almost noon here on the West Coast, and so I'm still having my tea and waking up a little bit. So, because I'm definitely I always get a late start, but
yeah, it's mid-afternoon here, so I'm having my afternoon coffee.
Yeah, exactly. The different stages of caffeine throughout the day.
Yeah, basically. Well, I'm a coffee drinker. I love my coffee, and I have my morning coffee. And then today I made a bunch of candles. I just finished up packing up like a crazy order. I was up till, I think I was packing that up till like 1 o'clock in the morning last night. And
oh wow.
So today is nice. I like one of the nice things about having the podcast that I'm enjoying is that it makes me stop and sit and just relax and have like a really nice conversation. Today's, I made, how many candles did I make? It doesn't matter, but I made some candles today, and I need to be chill because the past couple of weeks have been crazy busy. So afternoon coffee. The afternoon coffee is a must. And now we're just
self-care is important.
Totally.
I know everybody's busy. We always talk about productivity and all of that, but we also need to balance that. We have to be able to learn how to relax, and that's not something that comes easy to most people. I had to enter into a rigorous spiritual training in order to learn how to relax properly. So it's not something that comes easy. So wherever we can find those moments, we can eke out those moments of relaxation. Those are golden.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're not taught to relax. We're not taught self-care. We're taught to produce, go.
Right.
So when you say, you had to go into spiritual training to learn self-care in a way that's shocking sounding. It sounds ridiculous, but the reality is because we're not taught, like, where in our lives growing up are we taught to take time for ourselves? We spend hours a day in school and then come home with 3 hours of homework. That's not like
right.
You don't get,
because everything is preparing us for the big capitalistic thing, right? I mean, I don't want to get down on all aspects of capitalism. Some of it I think is cool, but as a whole, it's quite an untamed beast. And basically we've enshrined that, and so everything is about productivity and how much can you get done, and whatever. And so I've often really kind of cherished that lazy side of me, because I will admit that I definitely have quite a large lazy streak. And, but at some point, in my youth, growing up, that was a source of shame, because of course everything was just, oh no, you have to be productive and, blah, blah, blah. So I kind of went the opposite. And so, I've done a lot of things. I've written a lot of books, and I've written a lot of articles, and I've taught a lot of classes, and go. And, but I definitely have learned how to balance that with being able to disconnect from all of that. And some days are better than others, but I definitely try to give myself some time. And for me as a Pisces, one of the things that really works for me is ritual bathing. And so, and if anybody is
Yeah, I
following my
love your
Instagram,
bathing. I always see your photos, your selfies of you in the tub. I'm like, I want that.
In the tub. I love the tub.
Yeah, yeah. I'm
I
not.
love the tub. And when we moved into this house, we have this big tub. And I just feel so fortunate, you know, that we have this really big tub, you know, because growing up, I always had like the standard, you know, what you find in usually like in an apartment, you know, it's like, it's not like, I mean, it's one person can kind of soak in it, but it's not really. And so I'm very blessed to have a pretty large tub. And so I definitely wanted to show that off. And also it was also kind of a magic spell on myself too, to be kind of more accepting, you know, of, you know, my body and my looks and, you know, a lot of stuff. Cause as a gay man, you know, we often suffer from a lot of body dysmorphia. And there's a lot of, you know, images in society that tell us, you know, that tell us that we have to look a certain way and whatever. And so that was actually a lot of work for me. You know, that was, it took a lot of courage on my part to be able to post some of that stuff. And it's been really nice to hear positive feedback, you know, from people and, you know, whatever, that was actually not really expected, you know, in the beginning. So that was very soothing. That was a healing experience for me, but it was definitely a spell. This is kind of forcing me to get more comfortable, you know, with my body and all that. And so far so good. I feel like I'm doing better, but part of that's also getting older. Just getting more accepting about your life and whatever. And you know, I definitely feel better about myself now than I did 20 years ago. Right. And so to me, that's a win. But back to the thing of magical bathing, I just, as a Pisces, just being in the water, there's just something so magical about that for me. And so, but it also helps to force us to relax. And so if you're having trouble relaxing, you know, soaking in a hot tub, relaxing your muscles, that's going to lead to the relaxation of your mind. And I will have a lot of trance experiences in the tub, as a result. So that's kind of like my magic secret. You know, if I'm stuck on something, if I have a block, it's time to take a bath.
I have a hard time relaxing unless I'm reading. I find everything to kind of be like a waste of time. I don't take baths because like I'll slip into the bath and yes, it feels great, but it's like, okay, well, now what? Like what can I be doing? When I was a teenager,
see that productivity thing.
When I was a teenager, I used to go to the hair salon once a month, and I had like my hair is naturally dark, but I wanted to be like blonde, and you know, 1 month they'd put in like blue highlights, the next black, the next red, you know. But I'd literally I'd literally have to be at the salon for about 6 hours because it took so long for the bleaching process. And
of course.
And that was fine. But now, like when I go get my hair cut and it literally takes her 15 minutes, after maybe, you know, 2 or 3 minutes, I'm like, in my head, I'm like, can she not just be done? Like I have things to do. You know, so I do, unless it's reading, I do have a hard time just relaxing and kind of, you know, zoning out. I'm not much of a television watcher. When I do try to watch television, I'm thinking like, what can I be doing? You know, and that's the downside. Like, it's great that I work from home. I mean, my commute is walking downstairs into my ritual room. The downside is technically I could always be doing something work related. You know, like in theory, I could be doing, you know, I could be watching television and cutting labels or whatever. So I'm always like, you know, if I'm not working, if I'm not making something, like I should be. You know, so it's a little, you know,
I definitely know how that goes.
I feel lucky working from home, but there's a downside for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I know how that goes. I've worked from home for many years. Even when we had our shop, and we'd owned a shop for about a little over 12 years.
Mm.
And we actually closed it in 2020 because of COVID.
Yeah, I
And
saw
best
that.
decision we've ever made, actually. So I know a lot of people are like, oh, I'm so sad. And, so I feel so bad for you. Like, please don't feel bad for me, because this was great. I mean, there's a little sadness because it was such a great space.
Yeah.
Although the actual physical building, I will say, was falling apart, but that's a whole other, neither here nor there. And it was quite expensive. Renting a commercial space in the San Francisco Bay Area is no small feat. And
Right.
so that kept a lot of finances to keep that afloat. But we did it for, a long time. And, but closing it was actually a big sense of relief, but it also returned us to working from home.
Mhm.
And, so working from home 24/7, there's so many things across the board that can take your energy and attention away that you don't necessarily think of, and like you said, you could always be at work.
Yeah.
To some degree. And
Yeah.
I find that is true. I do try to make an effort, though, if like the family's getting together and we're going to like watch a show or something, I try to make sure that I don't keep referencing my phone, that I'm not doing some other project. As a general rule, there's some things I'll do, like my husband and I will sometimes watch a little show, or we'll listen to like an Audible. Right now we're actually listening to part 2 of The Sandman.
Okay.
And that's usually when we'll fold laundry, or like we could cut labels, or stuff like that. But for the most part, I just want to be in the moment with the thing that we're doing, because I know it's so easy to just keep working.
Mhm. Yeah.
And I know that's not good for me, in the long run, So, but some days are better than others. You take it as it comes. The other thing is working from home. Then I find sometimes, instead of working on the work projects that I'm supposed to be doing, I find myself doing laundry, or I'm doing a lot of dishes.
Yeah.
Or vacuuming, or whatever, all the housework stuff, which is great. We need someone to do housework, but I'm also like, oh, I had a writing deadline. I have to get this other stuff done. So right now, thankfully, I have no writing deadlines. So yay, the dishes will get done.
Yeah, when I'm overwhelmed with orders, that's when my head starts like, oh, but you really need to vacuum, and you really should, take down every single book you own and reorganize the bookcases, and and I know it's because a part of my mind just wants to escape from being overwhelmed with, because a couple of times a year all of my distributors will order at the same time, so that's thousands of products in that I'll get in orders in a span of 1 or 2 days. And so it's like, oh God. And so my brain just trying to make excuses to just, well, let's just ignore that. Like, let's vacuum instead, or whatever. But of course I can't ignore it, because, if these orders don't go out, then I don't have customers, then I don't have a business, then I don't have a house. Right. So,
Yeah, exactly. One thing leads to another.
Yeah. But it
is important.
Yeah.
So
I think like when that happens, where all these orders come in all at once, it's like I just got the same amount, like dollar value of orders today that I did in all of 2018 or 2017 for sale.
Goodness. Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah. And it's like, oh my God, this is too much. Like, I can't handle this. So my brain just wants to shut down. It is what it is. This is what I signed up for. I wanted to start this.
Right, exactly.
And I did it. And
everything has its own pitfalls, and we have to learn how to navigate them. And I'm glad more people that were talking about it, now that more people are working from home. There is more of kind of a sharing of experience, and then we kind of know, oh, we're not alone. Yeah. I'm not the only one making these foolish decisions. This is a common thing, and that makes me feel a little better. But maybe also sharing tips about, what have I done to make this better? And for me right now, not that I'm certainly not perfect at any of this, but really I'm just going to keep saying Google Calendar is my friend. You know, we have multiple calendars, you know, set up for different things, and it really keeps me on point on, oh, this on this day at this time, this is what I'm supposed to be focused on. And I will say, as a Pisces, I need that external structure, you know, to kind of keep me focused on what I need at the time. And I don't overly schedule, because then I'm going to feel like I'm being strangled.
Yeah.
But I do give myself chunks, like, okay, these are the tasks that I know I need to get done. And so I've got these on, you know, repeating events on these calendars and whatever. And that has been really working out for me. And I know it's like, everybody always asks that, you know, as, you know, because I teach classes, I do intense trainings in witchcraft. And so people will often ask me, well, what's the secret to making sure that you can do your rituals and your meditations and your daily practice and all of this stuff? And I'm like, it's so mundane. You're not even going to want to hear it, because everybody wants like a magical answer. Like, what's the special herb, you know, that I need to use in order to focus? And I'm like, that is Google Calendar. You know, it's time management skills. We have to have that mundane stuff. But a lot of people are just like, I don't know, I don't want the mundane answer. I want the magical answer. And I'm like, well, the mundane answer is the magical answer. The magical answer is the answer that works.
And if you can't figure out how to schedule your time for magic, then if there was a magical answer, it doesn't matter, because you don't have the time to do it, because you can't figure out your schedule. So, you know, here's the mundane answer. It's time management. And here are, you know, the steps you can take to manage your time properly, you know.
And a lot of the internal blocks, I feel, well, and I was going to say that's what they are. A lot of those blocks are just internal blocks. You know, it's we just decide, oh, I don't have time for this. When really you do. You just need to look at it and figure it out. I had a woman years ago, and she was just convinced. She said, oh, that she did not have time to do the meditations or anything. And yet she's trying to train in a witchcraft tradition, you know, with me. And one of the things that really tickles me / irks me is when people say, oh, I can't do this. And yet they expect that they're still going to be able to somehow progress, you know, along in this path. And I'm like, well, if it's actually true that you can't do it, then, I mean, that's on you. If you've decided that you can't do it, no harm, no foul, well, then you shouldn't be here trying then. If you've made up your mind that you can't do it, then you're just wasting your time. You're wasting my time. But this one woman ended up figuring it out. She had kids, and it was just like, they're, you know, running ramshot all over her and everything. She finally was able to get like a little altar kit that she would take into the bathroom, and she would lock the door, and she would do her practice in the bathroom, because it was the only place that her kids wouldn't be able to get to her. And she could take that time, and maybe it's just 10 minutes, 15 minutes, you know, whatever. But then she was able to make it happen. And so there's always something we can do if we want to be creative. And if we don't want to just self-defeat ourselves, you know, I think a lot of it is we just have this self-defeating thing, says, oh, I can't do it. Well, if you actually believe that you can't do something, then you're not going to be able to do it. You know, there's magic right there. You just cast a spell on yourself to make yourself not be successful. And I think that happens a lot. So we have to challenge those assumptions. Oh, I can't do it. No, there's a way you can do it. It's just, let's figure out how you can do it. Maybe you don't want to do it.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, and maybe that's okay too. Maybe your soul is telling you that this is not the path for you. You don't actually want to do it, but your head maybe says, oh, I want to, because it sounds cool, or so-and-so did it and I like them, or it's got aspects that I resonate with, but maybe it's just not for you, or not for you right now.
It's true.
But I hear people saying, I can't. Like, well, there you go. You're right.
Exactly. I'm not going to contradict you. You know, you're saying you can't, you know, you better than I do. So I guess you're right. I have a woman in my magical group who has 5 kids, and she does her rituals at like 3 a.m. Because that, you know, everyone's asleep finally. She's alone, quiet time. It works for her, you know. I'm not suggesting everyone, you know, with families, you know, stay up and, you know, and wait till 3 a.m. to do their magic, but it works for her. And you know,
Yeah.
he's fine
I
with
mean,
it.
there's also, I will say that also has some traditional precedent, in the craft, like 3 a.m, we're
Mhm.
talking about what we might term true midnight, which is not, of course, midnight on the clock, but like the opposite of solar noon, and often around, I don't know, 3 in the morning is actually kind of it's kind of that middle time where like most people are asleep.
Yeah.
So you get less psychic chatter.
Yeah.
Obviously on the physical level, your house members are asleep probably.
Yeah.
So you get less physical chatter. But there's something about that, like in the dead of the night. I mean, that's when witchcraft is said to be done, right? That's when you're riding your broomstick across the moon. So that sounds like that worked out really well for her.
Yeah. That's around that time when I'm like literally my most creative. My best time.
Yeah, I hear that.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
the best time for writing and doing stuff is around 3 a.m. So, you got to do what you got to do, you know, it's as simple as that.
Well, no one said that witchcraft was an easy path.
No.
Or certainly not a normalized one, so, staying up, in the middle of the night, that just sounds like par for the course. That's the perfect time to burn black candles and chant.
Exactly. How did you get into magic and witchcraft? Like, did you have any like experiences as a kid that kind of, looking back, you're like, oh yeah, like I was definitely, even as a kid, I was a weirdo.
Oh God, yeah, I was definitely the weird kid on many levels. And one of those levels, of course, looking back, and was like I was the obviously gay child, and so of course I didn't know what that meant, but so that was one of my layers of othering, so I always felt outside, everybody else. I was always very different. Mostly my friends were adults. I didn't necessarily get along with other children because I found them to be mean and sometimes boring because I just wasn't into the same things. The boys are playing, Indians and cops and robbers and cowboys and all the things that you do in the 70s. And yeah, I was just not into that. I wanted to play like, spaceships and, things of that nature. But I was really drawn to magic and specifically witchcraft, from an early age. And I've said this on other interviews, that, and it's tongue in cheek, but it's also true. I'm certain that a lot of that had to do with reruns of Bewitched, because I would watch that show as a little boy. And when I was 2 years old, I do remember telling my mother I was going to grow up and be a witch. And of course, that had more to do with Samantha Stevens than it had to do with, like wanting to feel empowered or any of that stuff. I wasn't really into or even was aware of like the psychological aspects of witchcraft. It was really just magic and making things happen. And I did have what I know now are psychic experiences, when I was a child, but at the time I didn't think of it necessarily in those terms. I had a very vivid imagination. I was always told I was a very imaginative child. I had very vivid dreams and would talk to a lot of non-human beings, in those dreams. And, that's also par for the course, I think, for a kid, an imaginative kid growing up. And, but looking back, I recognize now that like, oh, I was actually in communion with these non-human intelligences, because those types of communications have continued seemingly randomly, into my adulthood, and certainly not as frequent as they were when I was a kid, but that still happens, and but now, of course, I feel like I have some more, dare I say, control, of that type of mindset, layer of consciousness. But yeah, so early on, I was just very, very drawn inexplicably to witchcraft. I mean, magic in general, but something about witchcraft in particular, and all forms of witchcraft excited me. So I'm definitely not one of those people that is mad about Halloween witches and the green faces and the warty nose and everything. And I've heard so many things that are just bogus, about like why those things are awful and, oh, it's discrimination against witches. And I heard somebody say, oh, well, the reason that the witch is green is because they would hang her in the town square and leave her there as her body rotted. And so then she became green and gross and whatever. And then that's what they're referencing. I'm like, I don't actually think that's what they're referencing.
Right.
But whatever. I love all of it, all of the witch kitsch. No matter what, if witches are seething and evil, I love it. If they're eating children, I love it. If they are totally happy and healing people, I love it. You know, all of it, the whole spectrum.
Yeah.
I just love witches. And so we've got a lot of different witch things in our house. For a while, my husband Chaz was making dolls, and he made a couple marionettes of witches.
Wow.
And actually, in our tradition, the Anderson fairy tradition, when she was alive, Grandmaster Cora Anderson, we actually had gifted her, where technically it was Anar had commissioned Chaz, my husband, to make a witch marionette for Cora. And so it was proudly displayed in Cora's room for several years before she died. And yeah, I just, green face and the hooked nose, and she just loved it. She loved it. She called it Pearl, which I just thought that was a delightful name, because here's this like kind of cute but hideous stereotypical kitsch witch, right? You know, and with the black robes, and she's got like the pointy curly toes on her shoes and the stripy socks and, you know, everything. And she named it Pearl. And I just thought, oh, that's just delightful, right? And she would see it every morning. It was hanging from her ceiling so she could see it from her bed when she woke up every morning. I thought, oh my God, that's just delightful. I love it. I love it. I wonder where Pearl is now. I'll have to ask my friend Anar and see if hopefully she has Pearl somewhere.
That's awesome. I love it. I love it. I need to pause for 1 second. Hold on.
Sure.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for listening to the Lux Files. I'm not just the host of this podcast. I'm also the owner of Lelo Gonzalez. I make beeswax and scented spell candles, loose stick and liquid incense, anointing oils, and bath salts. So once you're done listening to this episode, why don't you head on over to my website at www.lelogonzalez.com and check out my products. For your convenience, the link to the website is also in the show notes. Okay, technical difficulties solved. So annoying.
Yeah, definitely. I know that it's not cool to blame Mercury for everything, but Mercury is retrograde right now.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to say that. I'm just putting that out there.
I'm going to happily blame it on Mercury retrograde, because we just figured out that it was collectively both of our faults. So I'd rather just shift, shift the blame on a planet. So there you go. I'm more than happy to blame.
I will say, just to make Mercury happier, so far, this has been a nice Mercury retrograde for me. I'm going to knock on some wood. But yeah, so far so good. This has been one of those where like little things from the past that need to be addressed, that keep getting shoved under the carpet, you know, shoved under the rug, they're coming back, and we're just able to like, oh, okay, we can fix this now. Yeah, so there's been like 3 or 4 things. Like as soon as Mercury went retrograde, we were like, oh yeah, this fixed. So like, okay, that sets the tone. So I'm hoping that everyone is going to have a much smoother Mercury retrograde.
I always, whenever Mercury goes into retrograde, I always tend to have very good experiences, like in all aspects, especially with my business, lots of positive, good things. I'm like, oh, I wish this could occur, you know, business wise. And Mercury retrograde rolls around and it's like, bam, 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 you know, it's all smooth sailing and everything is perfect. And da, da, da. Oh God, knock on wood. Yeah. Yeah. Cause exactly. I really don't want to start jinxing that. So yeah. Okay. So, getting back to our, yeah, that was my fault. Little delayed reaction there with my dogs. I knocked on wood and took him a minute to think it was someone knocking on the door. Stop barking.
At the door.
No one
protect.
No one wants to hear you guys. This interview isn't about you. Okay, so continuing on with our conversation. So you love, like growing up, you love like everything witchy.
Oh yeah, just everything witchy. And of course, I was also raised with a lot of fairy tales. I think obviously a lot of children are raised with fairy tales. in my case, it was also a lot of tales of the little people, because my mother is mostly Irish.
Okay.
And so, and my grandfather as a child came over from Ireland, you know, and so there was definitely that, that cultural strain, you know, growing up, which is why to this day, I love St. Patrick's Day, you know, because being an Irish American, that's the holiday we get, you know, for celebrating Irish heritage here in the United States. And that causes a lot of problems in the pagan community. And with people who actually live in Ireland, because of course, you know, St. Patrick was not so cool, you know, and there were a lot of reasons to not, you know, like St. Patrick. But of course, here in the United States, it's not so much about that. It's really just an excuse, a thinly veiled excuse, you know, to celebrate Irish heritage and probably green beer. You know, but I do actually love it. You know, every year my mom would have us watch that that Disney movie, Darby O'Gill and the Little People. And I can just feel like my Irish followers like rolling their eyes right now. But you know what? That's what I got as a kid. That was those were the stories that connected me to my ancestry. And so even today, I mean, I could look at all that stuff and recognize, oh, this is a problem. This is problematic here and whatever. But I'm also an adult and I know of a little thing called nuance. And I understand that everything is problematic on some level. So you kind of have to sift through it, you know, but there's such a nostalgia for me, you know, with those stories. But, you know, when the wind would howl, my mom would shiver because when she was a little girl, her father told her, oh, that was the banshee. Right. And so those stories came into my childhood, you know, and so I would hear the wind howl. And that's the first thing I think of is like, oh, is it, you know, of course, now today it's more likely that it's like, oh, that's the wind howling, you know, whatever. But I still have that kind of feel from a kid. And I never had the chills with it because it wasn't really explained to me as like something scary. Although if you look at the folklore, to hear the banshee howl is actually something scary, you know, and, but it was just really, for me, it was just another opportunity to connect with my heritage, because of course, with the whole Irish thing, it's a diaspora, right? And so there's a lot of wanting to reconnect, you know, to one's roots, but not really knowing exactly how to do that. Even when I traced my heritage through Ancestry, you know, .com, at some point it started to unravel because there are a lot of record losses, you know, especially as people, you know, boated over, you know, from, you know, Ireland, the British Isles and all of that. You know, and of course the Irish people didn't have the easiest time once they got here to the United States either. You know, I also was raised to know that, you know, hey, you know, there were a lot of signs in business windows, Irish need not apply, you know, and so we know where we came from, you know, but mostly it was just good stories. And it was, you know, the Fae, the little people, all those, you know, all those kind of fairy tales. And I just really kind of felt like, yes, everybody probably had these fairy tales, but I felt a little as if I was a little closer to them because my mom was so fiercely proud of our Irish heritage. And that wasn't really something I heard from other people. I didn't really know any other people of Irish heritage, which is interesting, I would say, because I grew up in a town called Dublin, California.
Oh, well, there you go.
You know, and I lived there. We moved there when I was 2. And I want to say when I was 10 is when Dublin actually officially became a city.
Okay.
And I remember I was in the parade. They had a parade for Dublin becoming a city, but there was so many Irish references, as you can imagine, you know, for Dublin, California. There was like the Shamrock shopping center and everything. So I just kind of felt at home, but it was so interesting that the other people that I met, you know, kids at school or whatever, I didn't really know anybody that was actually Irish, you know, or Irish heritage for the most part, maybe had a little bit of Irish, but we were the only people that I knew. And I was the only redhead, you know, in my school until later. I can't remember when, but there was a girl that joined the school and she had the same last name as me at the time, which I don't say because it's like my dead name, you know, but, and everybody thought we were brother and sister because she was redhead and, you know, whatever. I'm like, no, we didn't know each other. And we pretty much avoided each other, I think, because everybody wanted us to be brother and sister,
Right.
you know, or
Right.
whatever. And
Yeah.
like, no, so we just avoided each other. But she would be the only other person that I knew that was like likely Irish,
Yeah.
you know, in Dublin, California. Strange, but okay.
That's kind of cool. So how did you get into witchcraft? You know, like, so you have all of these interests like in witches, but you know, like how old were you? Like, I'm assuming like you came across a book or something like that. And
Yeah. Well, I think there was a lot of steps, right? I am gonna, this is funny on one level because everyone was rolling their eyes at the Christian right at the time. But do you remember back in the day, and they probably still do it now, but back in the day, especially, they were talking about how like, oh my God, Dungeons and Dragons is a gateway drug into Satanism and paganism and blah, 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 witchcraft, blah, 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 blah. And I'm here to say that's true.
Yeah.
And I love it. And I remember, so one of my uncles, I would go and visit, and he had the Dungeons and Dragons books like in his closet, but they were a secret because his mom was uber Catholic, like as my mom puts it, more morbidly Catholic. And so he wasn't allowed to have these things. And they were a little scandalous. I remember he brought them out, and I was little. I had to, God, how old was I? I had to have been like 5, 6 years old. And so he brought out these books. And I remember one, there was like a succubus, you know, the she demon, you know, and she's topless in her little like furry loincloth or, you know, whatever. As you can imagine, like fantasy art, whatever. So already that's like illegal, right? As far as, you know, like the Catholic mom is concerned, bad. But I would read about these different monsters and these demons and whatever, and the magic and everything. And I thought, oh, this is so cool, right? But later I would get a hold of the different Time Life books. And, you know, for our younger audience, you know, the Time Life books were these collections, you know, that, I mean, they'd have different collections about different things, but for these, it was like the paranormal, right? And I was just always so into it. If it was about UFOs, if it was about ESP, telekinesis, later crystals, but witchcraft, right? And, you know, and magic. Oh, that just fascinated me. So, but also I grew up in the 70s, and that was rampant in the 70s. You know, I was born in 71, you know, and so, and my mother, she was like 20 years old when she had me. And so, so fairly young. And so, and she didn't really have anybody else to talk to. She was a stay-at-home mom, and, you know, I was the first kid. And so she would end up talking to me about like some of this stuff, you know, that she would read about, like, oh, I read this thing about astral projection. And that happened a lot. But with the astral projection talk, I remember she was telling me about an exercise that she read about on how to astrally project. And it was like this simple thing. It was basically like, oh, you're just going to calm yourself and breathe deeply. And then you're going to close your eyes and imagine yourself like standing somewhere else. So if you're like, for example, if you're sitting in your living room on your couch, then you're going to close your eyes and you're going to imagine yourself standing in your kitchen, perhaps maybe washing dishes, you know, something benign. And so she's explaining this to me. I'm 6 years old. She's explaining this to me, and I'm sitting at one end of the dinner table, and she's like sitting at the far end. And I have this experience where I start to feel lightheaded because I'm doing it. I'm imagining myself actually up in the kitchen, you know, standing at the sink. And I start to get lightheaded. Everything in my field of vision just becomes washed out in this shade of lavender.
Oh.
And I start to slump in my chair. I feel like I'm about to I feel like, for lack of a better term, like my spirit is leaving my body and my body's now just going to crumple, you know, whatever. But my mom, as I'm kind of starting to go down, my mom gasps, and then that like shocked me, and I was back, and it kind of freaked us both out. And then it was years where my mom would not talk to me about stuff like that. after that, because she felt so guilty. She felt like, oh my God, did I open him up to something? And because my mom, of course, was raised Catholic. And so she had a lot of that fear, in her, because that's what they do. That's what the cult does. So, but that was actually a really great experience for me, because it taught me that I could shift my consciousness, that it wasn't just about this, the waking normality. So I was just always drawn to all that stuff. So I would go and get books, but I had to keep it secret because my mom was increasingly uncomfortable with it. I remember somebody had brought a Ouija board to school, and I was so interested in it. But then I remember I had a bad dream, and in the bad dream, I remember there was an eye that appeared like in my curtains, in my bedroom curtains, and it was just staring at me. And my mom blamed the Ouija board, even though it had nothing to do with like the Ouija board at all, whatever. It was just like, oh, here's the thing. So later, I actually bought a Ouija board and kept it secret. I would save up my lunch money, and I wouldn't eat at school. And then I used my money after a week, whatever, to go to the department store, and which is so silly. You could buy a Ouija board the next aisle over from like bath towels, whatever. It's just crazy. But I bought this board, and I kept it, and I actually used it to create a false bottom in my desk drawer in my room, so I could keep all of my occult paraphernalia like underneath it. And so no one would ever know, like if they went in my drawer. So I had my tarot, I got tarot cards, and I had crystals, and I had, some candles, and, all the things, right? But it's all in this drawer. And I flipped the Ouija board upside down and put it down on top of it. So it just perfectly,
that's awesome,
kind of protected. So that was my way of like keeping my magical side away. But there was one thing I did have. At one point, my mom knew I had tarot cards, and she wanted me to give her a reading. And I gave her a reading, and there was some stuff in the reading that wasn't so nice.
Like, how old?
She's like, you have to throw those away. What's that?
How old were you?
God, how old was I? I would say I was probably 14.
Okay.
13, 14. And, but yeah, then she was just like, oh no, you have to throw those away, which I thought was so hypocritical, because she wanted a reading first, and was like, oh, okay, this is good. But it wasn't a terrible reading, but there was something in it I remember that was like not so great. And I don't remember what it was. And I mean, obviously I wasn't a good reader. I just got a deck of tarot cards. I bought it like mail order. It was just like, it was crazy. But so she made me throw them away, but I didn't. What I actually did is I went into the family like game cabinet, and we had an old deck of Uno cards. Mm-hmm. And I took the cards and put them in the tarot box. And so it was still heavy. And she's like, are they really in there? And so I shook them. She shook them, and that was it. She didn't actually look. And so I threw that away instead. I kept my tarot cards underneath my Ouija board from that point on. Later, she became very accepting. When I, after I was an adult and I moved out, and, was able to come back and explain things, be a little bit more articulate, about it. Then she was into it. And actually also my maternal grandmother was really into it. I remember talking one night about goddess religion, and just like the patriarchy, and how, a lot of the paganism and goddess centered stuff was actively suppressed. And my grandmother was fascinated. And I remember it was late. It was probably like midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning. My grandmother would go to bed at 8, whatever, but she made herself stay up to hang out, and she's listening to this, and she got mad. She was so mad, because why don't they teach this in school? And I just thought that was amazing. That was such an amazing bonding moment, for me and my family. Because I was able to share this thing that was so dear to me, but it was really just grabbing books. I would go to the library. One of the first books that I read on the religion of witchcraft was A Witch's Bible. I think at the time was A Witch's Bible Complete by Janet and Stuart Farrar. If I'm pronouncing their name right. And I will say, no offense to them, it was quite boring, very dry, very British, but had a lot of really good info. I mean, it was just like almost like drinking from a fire hose, in hindsight. And I was like 13, 14. So, I've since, of course, reread it and gotten more out of it. But it was the first book that really taught me that, oh, there are actual people who are practicing witchcraft, and here's this methodology, of how to do so. And I didn't agree with everything.
Yeah.
Because I did feel, even at the time, that it was kind of whitewashed, and I talk about this a little bit. In one of I have 2 books that are coming out next year, and one of them, The Satyr's Kiss, is really about queer men and queer sex magic. And so I felt from that early time that, all of the talk about, witches, we don't practice orgies and all these things that are like alleged against us and whatever. And I thought at the time, I was like, it just feels like you're protesting too much, right? Like in that Shakespearean way.
Yeah.
And but I didn't actually know, but I just kind of felt like, well, even at that time, I'd never had sex, but I felt like, well, this is powerful. And I always somehow knew that, like, witchcraft was so intimately tied up with carnality, that it was really about passion and that primal power, right? And so to then say, oh, we're just kind of like, I don't know, poo-pooing the sexual part of it, I was just like, oh, this is just to get readers, or this is just it's a PR thing, right?
Yeah.
I also didn't necessarily believe that witches didn't hex people, and not that I'm a big hexer, because I don't really think that casting a bunch of hexes or curses is probably the best idea. But I do think that it has a place. And, I've certainly done them before, rarely, but I still have done them. And I think that there's definitely a place, in the craft for that. So even early on, when I was reading these books, I had some feelings that were like, oh no, that's not right. And I know that sounds a little arrogant now, because who was I to know? But I do kind of feel like maybe I had some, I don't know, pre-installed connection or knowledge. I don't know if I want to say from a past life, because I'm not necessarily comfortable, making those assertions. But I do feel like I had some sort of connection that has continued to inform me, along the way. And it was at 14 when I devised a self-dedication ritual, based on a bunch of stuff I had read and some stuff I just made up. It just felt right at the time. And I remember it was in my suburban backyard underneath the full moon. And I had a white candle and an apple and my blade. And I cut the apple in half to reveal the star. I offered one half to Diana, goddess of the moon. I ate the other half. I kept the core. I still have the apple core, the star.
Oh, wow.
It's in a little deer hide pouch. I actually just found it the other day. I told you earlier, I was tearing through my closet to make a recording studio, and there it was, hanging on a hook. So, but that's when it really kind of formally started for me. I had all the preamble, but that's when I took the step and decided this is really the path for me. And after that, I would seemingly randomly find different groups, so I had trained with different groups. I've received a few different initiations into different streams of witchcraft. I've got some Wiccan initiations up in there, but most notably is the fairy tradition, or what often is called Anderson fairy, or sometimes spelled Feri. And that's a particular initiatory tradition of witchcraft. It's independent, from Gardner's Wicca, but there's a lot that is the same, because fairy will steal anything it can use, pretty much. If it works, use it, is pretty much, I think, the mantra of the craft. If you find magic that actually works, well, I'm not going to abandon it. So I don't know, there's just one thing led to another. I've just always been drawn to witchcraft. And so here I am, now I'm, I write about the craft. I've been teaching witchcraft for more years than I care to count, right now. And I feel very blessed, because I'm doing what my heart wants me to be doing. And I'm going to knock on wood, but so far so good. I've been fairly successful in being able to feed and clothe myself and do just this work. And I feel that is a true blessing. Not a lot of people can really do that. A lot of people who are even teachers in the craft, or authors, will usually have a mundane job, that is actually feeding them and all that, or they'll have a spouse, that has a mundane job. And in our case, we're kind of just all in, and so all of us, there's 4 of us now, and we're all writers, and we're all teachers, and we all make products, and it's all wrapped up in our magical spirituality, at least to some degree. And our latest thing is plants. We're actually selling plants now, through our revamped store. And that was really my partner, Devin Hunter, the author of the Witch Power series. He got into houseplants. And
we know.
And so now
we know anyone that follows him on social media.
I know, right?
We know.
Yeah, there's a lot. It's so funny too, because it's a jungle. It's like Jumanji up in here.
Yeah,
we have so many plants just everywhere. I mean, you can kind of see a little bit behind me, and this is just a little. I just have a little bit like in my temple space, but it's just every room now is just like a bunch of plants. We've got humidifiers everywhere. Our backyard is like a pretty well kept jungle. There's lots of ponds and fountains. We have chickens now too. It's kind of crazy, and we live in the suburbs. It's kind of funny. Like, there's no houses behind us, so you can kind of just walk that street. And if you're looking up at like our house and the houses around, you can see like everybody's got like, oh, here's a tree or two trees, whatever in their yard. And then you come to our block and it's like a forest block. You can't see through. It's just, I have 4 sequoias, in our backyard, and a bunch of other trees. We have something like 21, 22 trees. And we live in the suburbs. We don't have land, so, but that's just how we've been. And I love it. If I have to live in the suburbs, then I want to live in my weird forest house in the suburbs.
Right. Yeah.
Maybe one day I'll be away from people and I won't have to worry about things like lawns, whatever, or, keeping the front, I don't care about that so much. But here we are.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's life now. Things are going pretty well.
That's awesome. With all the different traditions that you, like you were saying, that you've been through and initiated through, is there one or two in particular that really shaped you more than others?
I mean, definitely the fairy tradition, and that is definitely why that's what I focus on. Now, the fairy tradition is pretty nebulous, and which is probably one of the reasons that I was really drawn to it. There's less rules and more suggestions, I would say.
Right.
It's less about dogma and more about ecstatic experience, and so that really drew me. It's also very creative. It's very wrapped up in the artistic, the poetic expression. And so that also really drew me, because I had always been, that imaginative, creative child. I was always drawing. I was always writing. So those were things that really drew me in. But I mean, everything has shaped me to some degree. And I think everything that we do kind of adds to the picture, right? So another spiritual tradition that I work with that is also very influential is Reiki. And I know that it's funny, a lot of witches will actually turn their nose up at Reiki because, it's too new age and it's just silly, or, whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm like, really? I don't know how somebody who identifies as a witch can get off calling somebody else's practice silly, but all right.
Yeah.
First of all, I would like to talk about silly. Silly is awesome.
Yep.
Silly is powerful.
Yep.
Silly means that you can let go of all of the pretense, and which is really cutting you off, from the ecstatic experience, right? It keeps us in the ego. If we can judge something as silly, oh, well, I've made myself better than that, right? And all that is cutting you off, from the experience. So I often say we have to make friends with silly. We have to not care about what other people are going to say, because witchcraft is absurd. It's ridiculous. Like, oh, really? You're going to get a bunch of grown-ass adults like naked in their living room or out in the woods, and you're going to like jump around a fire and, like call to the old gods? That's freaking absurd. Yeah. It works. It's real. It's powerful, but it's also ridiculous, and I think that we have to really understand that, just because it's ridiculous doesn't mean it's not right. It doesn't mean it's not powerful, but we have to let go of like, what does this look like? What will the neighbors think?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Let that go.
Right.
Just be okay with being silly.
Yeah. I mean, like, I don't know. I kind of feel like I have an obligation to give my neighbors a show, you know? What, like, sit there, grab a coffee or grab a beer and, sit at your window and watch what we're doing. I mean, or join in. I mean, come on over, dance around the fire with us, jump over the fire,
There you go.
um, like, I'll put on a show. Absolutely. I'll look stupid. I'll look silly. I'll look ridiculous. Whatever you want to name it, I'm all in. I'm all in.
Yeah.
I don't.
I mean, it reminds me a little bit like the witch Lori Cabot, whom I love. And I first saw her when I was a little boy. They were interviewing her because she was running for mayor of Salem.
Right.
And and there she is. For the people that don't know who she is, she lives in Salem. She is the official witch of Salem. And she's in her 80s now. I got the opportunity to finally meet her a few years ago. I've met her now a couple of times. She's just delightful.
Yeah.
But she was the first public witch that I ever knew about because of this TV interview that she was doing. But there she is with her hair all black and everything.
Big hair.
And she reminded me of Grace Slick, from like Jefferson Airplane, Jefferson Starship, whatever. So she's like the rocker goddess to me.
Yeah.
And she had the big hair
and
there's like a big swath of white, like in the hair. And she's got the black flowing robes and the staff and like she looks the part.
Yeah.
But so many people would just get down on her, especially other witches. Oh, why does she have to do that? Yeah. Oh, she's absurd, whatever. And she did it for so many important reasons. She made a pact with the goddess that, that if, she was protected in she had this incident where her car had broken down. She had her kids with her and it was at night in the rain and it was like this horrible thing. And she prayed and prayed and prayed, and if the goddess was able to save her, she would dedicate her entire life, to the craft and live the part 24/7. And then, she was saved. I believe, as the story goes, a tow truck driver came up and free of charge and like helped her out and whatever, and she was able to go on her way. And she knew that she had made this pact.
Yeah.
And so, but part of the whole being a public witch, is about. I mean, on one level, it's political, right? Because we have to have visibility. Yeah. In order for people to actually recognize, first of all, that we actually exist, that we're here, and I know that there's some people say, well, you should just dress in quote unquote normal clothes. Well, that doesn't really help us in terms of our own magical consciousness. When I am dressed in ritual robes, that shifts my awareness. Yeah. I am now in a magical headspace. Also, when I took on the name Storm Faerywolf, that was also a spell cast upon myself, to shift my awareness, to remind myself every single day that I am living as a public warlock, that this is a commitment that I have made, because I understand we have to have visibility. And, as a gay man, I get how that goes. We needed to have, gay people out there and visible and doing the work, so that people could start to become more comfortable with the fact that we exist. Yeah. So that we could start to eke out some of the same rights and not be discriminated against. Because it's much easier to discriminate against a faceless theory than it is an actual human being. Not that that stops people from doing it, of course. Right. So whether it's dressing in robes or having, a fabulous name, it's really part of that spell to shift our consciousness into the idea that like, no, I'm acting as a witch, that I am acting as a spiritual agent, in the world. And and I really took that really from Lori Cabot. I might not wear the black robes, in public, but I use the name Storm Faerywolf wherever I go. And so, and that's every time I use that name and I reinforce that name and respond to that name, it's kind of reinforcing that magical idea, the magical persona. And so actually one of my upcoming books is about that as well. The Witch's Name is all about creating the magical persona and the name being kind of a container, you know, for those chosen energies, you know, that we wish to embody. And that will come out from Llewellyn in March of 2022. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah. Laurie Cabot was such a huge influence on me as a teenager growing up in the 80s. Huge.
Yeah.
Which, of course, I mean, because she was so visible and unapologetic about being visible and visibly, you know, different. Of course, you know, she's going to be that public figure that everyone talks about and writes about. So, you know, oh, that Laurie Cabot, yeah, I saw that her interview. Oh, you know, while I'm at the bookstore. Oh, and she has these books. Well, obviously, I'm going to buy them. Yeah, huge influence. I love her. She's fantastic.
Yeah,
I've never met her.
I'm glad to hear that, because a lot of people still don't, you know, I'll talk to people and they won't have heard of her, you know, because, you know, she's not like that active, of course, like on social media, because I mean, she's in her 80s, you know, whatever, and she does her own thing, and she's pretty insular to the Salem area, you know. Now, I mean, she's, you know, she had shops there, and now she sells stuff at various shops and you know, whatever. But I'm always amazed when people don't know of her, because I'm like, well, she was huge, and you know, this is our heritage as witches, especially witches in America. We should know this.
Yeah, we have, you know, we have such a concept, like a particular concept of celebrity, and you know, you have to, you know, step back and be like, okay, well, she's not a celebrity. You know, she was, you know, a public figure in our community at a certain time, you know, because again, she's in her 80s now. It's okay that she's not pumping out the books and, you know, doing the conference circuit, and it's okay. So yeah, I get surprised when people like, who, but I have to step back and be like, okay, like, you know, this is a different, you know, she's a well-known figure, you know, she's an elder in our community. It's not like a celebrity status kind of thing. She's one of the authors that I think is worth, you know, because her books, like from the 90s, you know, again, you look to past, you know, historical figures and older books, and you know, there can be a lot of inaccuracies and a lot of problematic things. That doesn't make them completely irrelevant. I think her knowing her story and knowing her books for, like, you know, like younger generations is certainly beneficial.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Yeah, I think that it's really important to recognize that, you know, most things probably are going to be problematic on some level.
Yeah.
You know, and especially if there are things that are from a previous generation, we'll say, right? You know, there wasn't necessarily the same level of cultural awareness, you know, going on, you know, back in the day as is happening now.
Yeah.
And but that doesn't mean we should just throw all of that stuff away.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, it does mean that we need to look at it in a new light. And since we were talking about Laurie Cabot, I just want to point out that I actually can't think of anything specifically in the Laurie Cabot works that would be problematic today. I'm not saying there isn't anything. I'll have to revisit it. I'd have to revisit it with like a fresh eyes to make that determination. But nothing is sticking out for me right now. But again,
I was thinking more like, you know, inaccuracies, because, you know, like, you know, 90s witchcraft publishing and you know, with you know, the histories and stuff like that. And it's like, okay, well, yeah, that's a funny thing too, because I will say, I'm hoping no one's going to get offended by me saying this, but
it's funny because as a current Llewellyn author, you know, you talk about like, oh, the witchcraft inaccuracies of the 1990s. And I will say that Llewellyn was kind of known for printing a lot of witchcraft inaccuracies in the 90s. You know, there's a lot of witchcraft, you know, that was out there. I don't necessarily, I don't want to be a mean girl, So I'm not going to like name names of books, but there are some terrible books. And,
Oh yeah.
But I will say it's funny because I see a lot of people like on social media today that will complain about Llewellyn. Oh, they just publish crap and blah, 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 blah. And that obvious, for me, it's obvious that they haven't picked up a Llewellyn book since the 90s, because Llewellyn really did a good job of kind of revamping. And I will tell you that my experience writing for Llewellyn, there were things that they were like, oh, well, no, you can't say this because this isn't accurate or whatever. This isn't true. They were definitely like wanting to make sure that things were researched, right?
Yeah.
And it was funny because in my case, it actually was accurate. It actually was researched, but they didn't know that. It was just funny. Like one of the things I do a meditation where, you know, the standard meditation where you're putting your roots down into the earth, right? Well, as you get to the center of the earth, I talk about one of the visualizations or imaginings is that first you get to the outer layer of the core of the earth and it's molten iron. And then you get into the inner core and it's crystalline iron. And my editor at the time was just like, oh, well, it wouldn't be crystalline. It's a molten iron core. And so I had to send them an article to a scientific paper to show that no, because of the pressure, it's actually crystalline, you know, in the center. And but I really appreciated that though, because they were so invested in like, no, we're not going to put forward these baseless claims, right? Because that happened already. That happened in the 90s. That was when, you know, that last really big witchcraft revival that was happening. And that's when the movie The Craft came out. That was like 96. So that was like a big time for like all these books to come out, and nothing was well researched. Or I shouldn't say nothing, but there was a lot that was not well researched.
Yeah.
But today Llewellyn is really big on, no, you have to cite your sources. And I'm grateful for that.
Yeah.
But it's so funny that people complaining about that. I'm like, well, you obviously haven't picked up a Llewellyn book since the 90s, because that is not the experience now.
Yeah. And I mean, you know, me 25 years ago, I'm a completely different person. The same can be, you know, for a company. So, you know, have a look at, okay, you know what was going on back then, have a look now, and you know, then form an opinion. I laugh at some of the books and just cringe and be like, oh, you know, from the 90s. I'm like, I can't believe these books exist. But at the same time, they're the books that, you know, were so important to my to my formative years as a magical practitioner. And so I get to cringe at some of them, but at the same time, unless you were there, unless you have the books, unless you read them all, like maybe don't talk about them, because you haven't like.
Oh yeah, but on social media, that's asking a lot.
Oh, I know, I know, because you're only
and that's what it's there for.
You're only bashing book A, B, and C because you saw other people doing it on Twitter. You didn't actually read the book. So you know what? Just, you know, maybe, I don't know, go to your local metaphysical shop, find a really good book, buy it and read it, and spend your time that way instead of bashing 30-year-old books.
Or even if you don't know what a really good book is, buy any book. You know, read some bad books too, because at some point you have to be able to learn the difference on your own. But know why you are judging something as good or bad. Not just because it's popular or not popular, but because it's accurate, because maybe you need to do your research. You know, if you read a book and you're mad and you're like, oh, this isn't true, well, make sure that you know why it isn't true. Because maybe it is true. Maybe you're the one that has bad information. You know, I still see people talking about like, oh, the burning times, right? And, you know, not that didn't exist, but it didn't exist in the way that early modern craft promoted it, right? I mean, really, we get that from Gerald Gardner, who said 9 million people were burned, you know, in the European, the witch craze. And really, he was just taking, say it again?
that actually predates that 9 million witches burned. That actually predates Gardner. I traced it back as far as
Oh, wow.
yeah, I traced it back as far as the Nazis. In one speech from Himmler, I believe, because the pagan Nazis were really big on creating like a revivalist Germanic paganism, and they had the opinion that the evil Catholic Church, which was secretly run by, the evil Jews, purposely, did the witch persecutions to wipe out the superior Aryans. So I kind of trace back to like the proto-Nazi groups, all the way back to like the mid 19th century. Couldn't find any other references that older than the Nazis. So so we were spreading Nazi propaganda there for a while, actually. And
wow. So I didn't know that.
Yeah, and the younger generation, that are like, oh, we're the witches you couldn't burn. I'm like, I realize they don't actually realize they're spreading Nazi propaganda, but you're spreading Nazi propaganda, because the 9 million witches burned were actually maybe I used to do a lot of research on the witch hunt in early modern Europe, and the numbers keep getting revised. I think we're talking now less than 50,000 actually executed in a 400 period, and they were Christian. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I mean, that's another thing too to keep in mind, is they weren't actually witches as we understand witches.
Yeah.
But we could still gain some connection and solidarity, with them, because they were certainly executed as witches.
Absolutely.
But don't think they were the same. They weren't doing what we're doing, certainly.
And I
would think if there were any actual witches, they probably got away with it. They were probably smart enough to really make sure you're never going to find anything.
Yeah. And I'm all for modern mythology, because if I'm into ancient mythology, why would I poo-poo modern mythology? And it's okay to have that sort of burning times mythology, because let's be honest, magic, but especially witchcraft, it's very political, and it's very resistance, and you know what I mean. So you could certainly use the mythology that the modern witchcraft movement has built around the burning times, but just acknowledge the historical truths of the witch hunt. I don't actually believe that Isis and Osiris actually walked the earth or whatnot, but that doesn't matter. I could still work within that mythology. So just recognize,
I hear you saying.
Recognize, the historical truths. Recognize, the fact that these were largely innocent Christians caught up in craziness as well as greed. Because I'm sure if we were able to speak to them, they wouldn't be so thrilled to still be labeled as witches.
Right. That's a good point. And really, I mean, we're talking about a movement that was largely political and financial. It really is kind of like the ugly head of capitalism, raising up, right? Because a lot of the people, if they owned land, suddenly now the church owns it. That sort of thing. And a lot of women, a lot of unwed or widowed women who have property and whatnot. Well, that can't be allowed,
Right.
under patriarchy. So we got to keep them in their place, and all it takes is that accusation. And we see the same type of things happening now. Not necessarily by labeling people witches, but like in the political arena, you label somebody a socialist in the United States, and oh my God. Which never really, I don't really understand that, because I will say that in my heart, I'm definitely much more of a socialist. And I think that we should be taking care of each other. I think that our government should be taking care of its people. And to me, that's what socialism is. I know that a lot of countries, I almost said companies, who are socialist have not actually been that great at it. But this isn't really an example of how socialism is bad. It's really more of an example of how human-led governments tend toward corruption. Because
but there's a big difference between
our capitalist system is corrupted.
Exactly. But there's a big difference between socialism and democratic socialism. Like the socialism that you see in South America is not the democratic socialism that you see in Europe. You know what I mean? They're just
right.
It's different. It's different. So you can't even point to, the negative aspects of socialism to discount democratic socialism. They're two different things.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, exactly. And we've got these terms that are kind of used as umbrella terms, but maybe that's not a good idea, right? Because they actually are representing different things, as you said. There are different types of socialism and different types of, how capitalism manifests, in different places, but anyway, but it all comes down, I think everything ends up being political, because really, especially in the modern age, politics is just the arm or the methodology, by which we can, try to help our people, on a grander scale, and make these decisions that are going to affect the masses, right? That's important, but again, on a personal level, that means that a lot of us, especially if we are marginalized, if we're minorities, whatnot, we have to be visible. We have to be the squeaky wheel. We have to advocate for ourselves, and we have to also advocate for each other. Me as, I'm gay, but I'm also a white man, and so part of my job is I am going to try to elevate other people's voices that are outside of my particular community. I do feel it's important that we all band together. If we're some form of minority, we should be supporting other minorities. Because we need that collective power. We need to be able to change things for the better. And we need everybody to work together on some level, for that. And that means we have to, embrace each other's differences. It's not even like overlooking differences, right? No, we need to celebrate our differences. And I need to celebrate my differences. I need to celebrate your differences. I might not understand somebody else's differences, but that doesn't matter. I'm still going to celebrate you, because diversity, man. And that's what it's about. And I really feel that that's really big in witchcraft.
Absolutely.
That it is about, honoring the different. Witchcraft goes against the mainstream. It goes against the grain. And I think it's important to recognize that in the DNA of witchcraft, it's also political. If you look at Leland Zaradia, come on, that is a political manifesto on some level. It's the witches are taught witchcraft in order to torment their oppressors. So it's given this power, this magic of witchcraft is taught to the oppressed. It's taught to those who are slaves, who are downtrodden, in order for them to be able to rise up. So when people start saying you need to keep politics out of witchcraft, they don't understand witchcraft. It's the same argument when I hear from people saying, "Oh, keep your politics out of Star Trek." I'm like, have you ever watched the show?
I'm like, so you have no concept of who Gene Roddenberry was and what his whole,
It's
idea
so funny.
behind
That's such a
Star
big
Trek
thing.
was. I don't get. I don't get it. I don't get it. I see that all the time. Keep your politics out of Star Trek, or
people
keep
see what they want to see
out of witchcraft or your magic or whatever. I'm like, that makes no sense. Like what? That it makes no sense. I don't get it.
Right.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense because
Yeah.
it's literally there.
Yeah.
From
but
square
easy,
one.
But that's a really easy statement to make coming from certain groups of people, certainly certain privileged groups. It's very easy for a white straight man to be like, oh, politics out of Star Trek, keep your politics out of this, keep your politics out of that. Very simple for him to do that. You know what I mean?
Well, and not recognizing that statement in itself is political.
Yeah.
When you're saying, oh, keep certain groups out of it, or I don't want that highlighted, whatever. Why do you have to make those characters gay? That's a big thing that often comes up.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but you were okay with making those characters straight.
Mm-hmm.
How is straight not political?
Yeah.
And gay is automatically political.
Yeah.
It's all political.
Yeah.
It just aligned with, previously when my people were being excluded, that was in alignment with your politics. And so you were okay with it. Yeah. But now that, my people are not being excluded, oh, suddenly this is political. This is woke culture. Yeah. This is bad, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Well, I'm sorry. For me, that's also just the screaming rants of a man-child, who is just mourning the decay and demolishing of the patriarchy.
Exactly.
So, exactly. It just gives me a nice warm feeling.
I know, right? Yeah. Well, that's the funny thing too. Like when you see these people, like, oh, why do these characters have to be gay? Or keep your politics out of da da da. All of these sort of statements, and you know what statements I'm talking about. Anyone that's on social media knows the type of statements I'm talking about. Those, in a way, I mean, they can be, annoying at times, infuriating at times. But in a way, they're good statements to hear because it is recognition that, things are changing. Because as you said, like,
exactly,
back when it was a crime for one man to hold another man's hand, when that was a crime, when you can go to jail for that,
right?
You weren't saying, oh, this is political. You know what I mean? Because this fit with your worldview of what was normal and what was acceptable. So that's dying. And that's a good thing. Yeah. So, these are the last gasps of a aging, bloated patriarchy that, knows it's dying and is a little fearful. I have some sympathy because change is scary. But at the same time, I don't have sympathy because the change doesn't actually affect your life. Seeing characters or seeing Black characters doesn't actually change your life. You're going to go to bed and wake up, the exact same life. You're going to be
right. You're not going to lose your job over it.
Yeah.
It was the funny thing, like when same-sex marriage equality was like the big hot button issue, before things got resolved here in the United States. Straight people would often say, oh, well, this will, somehow affect my marriage.
Yeah.
Like, oh, if you're going to give everybody marriage, then it means my marriage is useless or whatever. And I always thought, like, really? You're basically just saying that no matter what, your marriage is useless.
Yeah.
And so, okay, well then it sounds like you have a sucky marriage, dude.
Yeah.
Maybe you need to work on that, but the fact that these two gay guys over here can also get married. How does it actually affect your marriage? It doesn't do anything to you. You don't even have to know these people, you don't even have to think about them anymore, but yet you are, and you're going to work to try to overturn this or whatever. And of course, we're kind of, it's a little spooky right now because of course not that I want to get too political because I could go down that rabbit hole.
I know, right?
Anybody's business, but they're trying to overturn that even now. There's work starting with abortion, but then they've also made these overtures that they're after these other Supreme Court rulings that gave us same-sex marriage equality, that gave us throwing out anti-sodomy laws, so we can't assume that those things are a done deal, because the opposition is still very much gunning for us.
Yeah.
And let's, not that I want to be too dramatic about it, but really the party that put children in cages is still foaming at the mouth to put us in those cages too.
Oh, absolutely.
So don't think for an instant that we're safe.
Yeah.
And then we could just forget about it. We have to keep fighting. There's so much more work that has to be done.
Yeah.
We have lifetimes of work ahead of us.
Yeah. See, it's, our political system is different up here. And, I listen to, American news and about Roe versus Wade and, talking about precedent and how the Supreme Court, usually, goes with precedent. With our governments, we had 11 years of a conservative government. Now we're on year 6 of a liberal government. They're opposing, parties, but it's not us versus them mentality. And I don't know if it's because we're also a multi-party system, like we have 5
right,
federal parties. That could be a part of it. I don't know, but whatever. So it's when governments go from liberal to conservative, the conservative party typically doesn't start undoing, social changes like gay marriage or, stuff like that. And it's not because it's old precedent. It's just, it's precedent, these big things that the previous government has done that the next government pretty much leaves alone. Our Supreme Court, your Supreme Court is so partisan and so political, which makes no sense to me because, the system of laws should be nonpartisan. Our Supreme Court, when someone retires or dies or whatever, the prime minister doesn't just, well, technically they can pick whoever they want, but that's not how it works. What region, with this person retiring or dead, what region is in Canada is now not being represented by someone sitting on the Supreme Court? You know what I mean? And it's not like, okay, well, they're a raging liberal or they're a raging conservative. I'm a raging conservative, so I pick this person. It's very different. So not to say that everything is safe, but we just don't have the same, gay marriage has been legal here for, oh God, I can't even, how long now? It's been a long time. I mean, it's been years and years and years. It's pretty safe. It's pretty safe. I mean, we don't even have abortion laws here. We don't even have any sort of abortion laws. You technically a woman can have an abortion up till the time of birth. There's lots of conservative politicians that would like to implement abortion laws, but it's just not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. It's
Yeah,
very,
that's nice.
it's just different. We're just different.
That sounds nice.
No.
You know, that is, we don't have here in the United States, we don't necessarily have that same level of confidence, you know, because we've watched as one party will work hard to overturn and to dismantle based on nothing more than the religious bigotry of their base.
Yeah.
You know, and it's just, it's amazing to me. I don't exactly know what the answer is, how the United States is going to fix all of its stuff, because it's pretty tangled.
Yeah.
And you know, and I think, I don't know, a two-party system is just, it's just crazy. It's just, this is not where you just heads butting, right? And I also don't want to give false equivalency, because I will say I am a registered Democrat. Not that I agree with all of the Democratic policies by far, but in our system, that's the one best shot at defeating the Republican Party, which I absolutely do see as a party of evil.
Yeah.
And I know that people will get down on me for that. Oh, there's good Republicans too. No, there are not. There is no such thing as a good Republican, because they are feeding the beast.
Yeah.
And the beast, by way of policy, is trying to take away the rights of women, of Black people, you know, and of queer people.
Yeah.
By a matter of policy, you know. So don't tell me, oh, I'm a good Republican. I'm a fiscal conservative.
Yeah.
You can shove that where the sun doesn't shine. Okay. You're still giving those fiscal dollars to an organization that is literally trying to wipe out my people.
Yeah.
So we're done.
Yeah.
And don't even get me started on the anti-vax nonsense.
Yeah.
Not that the Republican Party has a monopoly on the anti-vax stuff. There's a lot of crazy leftist people in the pagan community. There's a lot of anti-vaxxers. I think they are a bane. If you are an anti-vaxxer, I don't want you buying my books. I don't want you following me on social media. Go away. You know, I'm sorry.
If you were a real witch, you wouldn't need a vaccine. Like, oh God, where
do you think all that stuff comes from? The witch was the one who was working the herbs, who tried to figure out, oh, how can I, you know, heal? How can I prevent, you know, these health ailments, whatever. The vaccine is just an extension of that methodology, you know, of that technology, right? And oh my God. And none of all these people who are yelling about like, oh, I don't want to do vaccines, whatever. The fact that they don't have polio while they're saying this is not lost on me.
Yeah.
You know, we were able to eradicate pretty much these diseases because we take vaccines, you know, like sensible adult people. But now there's all this anti-mask, anti-vax. Oh my God. This is just insane to me.
Yeah.
And I do judge these people.
There'll always be anti-vaxxers, but these aren't just the regular anti-vaxxers. You know, like people have been convinced, and it's purely political.
Yeah.
You know, because there was no outrage when, like, you know, Alabama. I was watching CNN the other day, and Alabama has the strictest vaccine mandates in the entire country. Like you say, you know, talk about polio and measles and mumps and stuff like that, but yet Alabama won't include the COVID vaccine.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's all purely political. It really is.
It really is. Absolutely. And it kind of ties into the whole, you know, the Trump cultism, you know, and, you know, Fox News, and none of it is real because like, for example, like all of the Fox News people have all been vaccinated, you know, and yet they're spinning these lies, telling their, you know, their watchers, the constituents, you know, like, oh no, you better be worried about it.
Bad. Vaccine mandates are bad. Meanwhile, you know, Rupert Murdoch.
We've had vaccine mandates forever.
Yeah, but he was one of the first.
You can't travel internationally without them.
Yeah, he was.
Go on.
People in the world to get the vaccine. Rupert Murdoch. Fox News has the mandate. You have to get a vaccine. But even when they were even before the vaccine, and they're like, oh, this shutdown and work from home is bullshit, blah 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 on Fox News. Meanwhile, they're working from home, and they're like, oh, you shouldn't be working from home. You need to be in your office. But you're not. I mean,
right? What are the so now I'm seeing the article. This article just came out that was
Judge Janine. Like she's literally sitting at home getting drunk and then going on camera slurring her words, being like, oh, you need to be in your office. You know,
oh my God.
You've literally been sitting at your house all day drinking and working, but yet
that sounds great.
No one else.
More people should be able to stay home to drink and work. I love it. But it's weird because, yeah, it's totally political. It's not based on anything real.
Yeah.
You know, like the whole thing, like, oh, you need to go to the office, you know, productivity, blah, blah, blah. Well, studies have shown that like people are more productive, you know, being able to work from home, you know, and they're able to take naps.
Yeah.
And they're able to work on their side hustle, you know, and give more, you know, to their job than they were producing before. So no, that isn't based on anything real.
No.
You know, no, I obviously, I think that more people should be staying home, and not just with the pandemic. I think the pandemic, you know, as horrible as it's been, it's also been an opportunity, you know, for us culturally to look at some of these foundational things and maybe make some changes, you know, maybe some different choices, absolutely. You know, I don't think we need everybody commuting to work all the time. And, you know, what about an office building? You have to pay rent for that office building. If everyone's working from home, you as the company no longer have to pay for that space, you know, so that could be a good thing, you know, for a company. Of course, we have to market this in terms of dollars, right? Like, oh, you know, because telling people that like, oh, well, this is just better for people, that obviously isn't going to fly in the face of corporate America.
No, I mean,
you know, but it will save you money. That's a whole other argument.
Yeah, if you market it as better for your employees, they're definitely not going to be into it. You know,
that's so sad, but that's so true.
What else? What other examples do you have that these big companies do because it's better for the employees? I'll wait.
Right.
You know.
I don't know exactly. I don't know of any of them.
Yeah.
In order to do something good for your employees, it usually has to be mandated.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, that's why, you know, it's like, oh, we have the 40-hour work week, which I think is too much anyway. But, you know, it used to just be like, people just have to work every day.
Yeah.
You know, 12 hours, 14 hours, you know, whatever. And so now we made it an 8-hour work day. And if it's more than that, you get overtime, you know? And again, I still think that that's too much. I don't actually think that everybody needs to be working, first of all. Really, we don't have necessarily work for everybody. You know, not everybody needs to work. I mean, yeah, if you want nicer things, then sure. You know, but I'm also back to the socialism thing. I think that a universal basic income would really be a good thing, you know, for society, you know, to be able to get people just the basic needs, you know, get people out of homelessness, you know, bring them up above, you know, starving poverty, you know, and, you know, but yeah, if you want a car, then obviously you need to get a job and, you know, work for that. If you want like a bigger space, you have to, you know, you want nicer things. Yeah. No one's saying everything should just be handed to you. Yeah. But basic needs, you should have healthcare.
Yeah.
You should have an opportunity for education. You know, you shouldn't go broke, you know, because you want to go to school, you know, because that's an investment in everybody. You know, the more people that get educated, an educated populace is a better populace. You know, well, we could actually work together.
But it isn't for the politicians. That's the thing.
Right. I'm hearing exactly in the current system, you know, you want people to be pliable. Yeah. And you're far more easy to be pliable if you are uneducated.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
And like Trump said, he loves the poorly educated. He wasn't lying.
Yeah.
You know, and that was why, because it's easier to manipulate you.
Of course.
You know? But the flip side now is we've got a bunch of people who feel that they can do their own research, you know, and like, oh, well, I know way more than the scientists do. And, you know, whatever. And I'm not going to go into details, but I even have a family member who is like this now.
Mm.
And I'm so shocked. But yep, they've done their research. They're not getting the vaccine.
Yeah.
At least they wear a mask.
Yeah.
So I guess, I should take the small victories.
I have a cousin that, and I'm doing air quotes, can't take the vaccine, but it gets her face pumped full of Botox and smokes and drinks.
I don't know. That's so fucking crazy.
But the vaccine.
I don't know. I do want to say there might be people, because I don't know, I'm not a doctor. There might be people that for whatever reason would have a medical exemption, from getting the vaccine. That is a totally different thing though, that like what most people are talking about, most people don't have a medical exemption.
Yeah.
They just have feelings about it.
Yeah.
And don't want to do it. And, okay, that's fine. You don't want to get vaccinated. Okay, I get it. I don't think the government should be able to put things in your body without your consent. But I also don't think you should be allowed to go anywhere.
Yeah.
If you're not going to be vaccinated, then stay home.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. You have to stay home.
I've spent
order your groceries.
2 years. I've spent almost 2 years at home. So I've done what was right. I've done what was I was told to do. Now I have my 2 doses. I want to start living my life again. So, all of our provinces are mandating vaccine passports, and we're going to have a federal passport. So like if you fly or take the train, because that's all federally regulated, you have to have both vaccines. So you don't want to take the vaccine, that's fine. But now it's your turn to stay home, and I'm going to fly around.
Yep.
And I'm going to go to shows, and I'm going to get back to some semblance of normalcy. Can I pause for a moment?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's awesome.
There, and we're back. So I want to talk about warlock and you as a writer. So warlock has a lot of negative connotations to it, and even in our community it has a lot of negative connotations to it. So first of all, what is the historical context of the word warlock?
So first thing I want to say is, when the word warlock basically was first introduced, it meant oathbreaker, deceiver, in league with the devil. It did have, even then, connotations of magic. It was it was a man, who was practicing witchcraft, so it had all of those connotations. And all of that would be part and parcel of the same horror, as seen from the puritanical mindset, right? So, so this idea, when people say, oh, well, it means this. Well, it used to mean that. You're absolutely right. Warlock used to mean oathbreaker. Just as many words in the English language used to mean something that they no longer mean.
Yeah.
And so, but this insistence that a previous meaning, a previous etymon, somehow is still the definition, that is known as an etymological fallacy. That's just not true. That's not how language works.
Yeah.
So for the past 500 years, warlock has simply meant a man who practices witchcraft. It's a male witch. Now, I will say there are other attempts at redefining warlock. There are other ways it's been used, even in the craft. In some forms of British traditionalist Wicca, a warlock is simply the person who will bind the would-be initiate. So in many initiatory forms of modern witchcraft, the person who's going to get initiated often will traditionally have their hands bound behind their back. They'll be blindfolded. One of their ankles is usually tied, that whole thing. Feet neither bound nor free, right? The person who is actually tying that cord on that would-be initiate is known as a warlock, and that is a warlocking, in order to bind that up. So that's another use of the word even in modern witchcraft, although it doesn't get used that much anymore because so many people have insisted, oh, well, it's an insult in the pagan community.
Yeah.
And that's really only because somebody decided it would be. And I think that was Gerald Gardner. And I say think because I don't have the books in front of me, so I can't go back and show you like where it is. But I remember just in my studies, you know, when I was growing up and, you know, like, again, like in my early teens, you know, reading all those books, you know, I read about, you know, oh, warlock is an insult. No self-respecting witch would call themselves a warlock because it's an insult, blah, 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 blah. But what that actually seems to be to me is that Gardner, you know, he had no competition really at the time. And pretty much what he would say about witchcraft was just accepted as, oh, well, that's how it is, because no one else was writing about modern witchcraft, right?
Yeah.
The anti-witchcraft laws had just been repealed. What was it like? I think the anti-witchcraft laws in England were repealed, I want to say 1951. And I think that Gardner's book came out in 1954.
Yeah.
1952. Yeah. So like in 54, I think is when Gardner's book, Witchcraft Today, I think was his first one.
Yeah.
And then later, he had I think the meaning of witchcraft was one of them. I'm not actually, I have to check my notes and see. But Gardner had said, oh, well, this is like an insult. And really, I feel that it's because he was putting forward this idea that like, oh, look, I have this specialized knowledge, right? Whereas most of the populace would just think, oh, warlock is a male witch. I'm telling you the real deal, right? So that's the kind of thing that sells books.
Yep. Yeah.
It's like, oh, I didn't know this.
Yeah.
But he doesn't cite his sources because there is no source.
Yeah.
Because it's not true.
Yeah.
You know, that wasn't actually used as an insult until he said it was. And then people are like, oh, okay, well, that's it. I feel important now, right? Yeah. I'm going to buy into this. But really, you know, to me, I use the word warlock, and I have for many years, because it gives me an opportunity to really examine how the patriarchy, you know, has infected the idea of the male. And I want to work with the divine masculine, you know, as well as the divine feminine and the divine non-binary as well. But using the word warlock gives me an opportunity to claim my own brand of masculinity in conjunction with witchcraft, you know. And so again, as a gay man growing up, I was often told that I was not a real man. Mm-hmm. You know, this idea of a real man is a heterosexual, you know, oh, he beds the woman and he fights the fight and, you know, blah, blah, blah.
He doesn't cry and blah, blah, blah.
Exactly. You know, all those things, right? And so I'm here to say, no, I'm a real man. I'm just a different type of man, you know, than what you have been accustomed to, right? And sometimes I will read as more feminine, you know. Growing up, you know, I certainly had my time. I was in a cast of the Rocky Horror Picture Show for 4 years. I played Dr. Frankenfurter, you know, and so I certainly did my time in drag. I even did some female impersonating, you know, for a brief time, you know, in there. And I actually found all of that to be a really good, I will say, shamanic exercise, you know, and being able to blur gender, and get out of what you have been told. And now you can express something different. I think that's important. But to me, I also feel that warlock is also, when it was used as a slur, you know, back in the day when it was oathbreaker, deceiver, that was also a way of kind of emasculating the people that it was applied to, because witchcraft is a womanly art. Right? You know, especially if you look back on how it was really marketed and the fear, you know, during like the witch craze and everything. You're looking at the Malleus Maleficarum, you know, really saying that like, well, women especially are susceptible, you know, to witchcraft. Yeah. And so it was considered a womanly art. And so any man who would then be practicing this womanly art must be worthy of scorn. And in patriarchy, you must then scorn the man who would then, reject his birthright of superiority, right? Of supposed superiority. So to me, using the term warlock is also a reminder that that this is on one level, a womanly art, but on another level, it's not. It's beyond gender. And so this is an opportunity for me as a male, I do identify as a cis male. I now embrace that in my craft as well. And a lot of people don't understand that. And, I'm not here to say, oh, if you're a male witch, that means you have to call yourself a warlock. I don't care what other people call themselves. If you want to call yourself a witch, I use the word witch to describe myself too sometimes. I just most often use warlock because I feel it's more accurate. And I've always been drawn to the word. It's a word of power. For me, it's a word of magical brotherhood. I think it's important for men to explore what it means to be our gender, and what that means for us, not in any sort of way of superiority or trying to, put anybody else down, but just explore who we are, in our own setting. I have been a part of a group. We're on hiatus now because of COVID. But my group, the Brotherhood of the Satyr, which started out as a open circle at the store that we used to run, but then went private. It's all queer men, and we're from different witchcraft traditions. We're all witches in some manner, but we would come together and we had kind of our own shared praxis that emerged. But we were all queer men, and so that gave us an opportunity to really explore our queerness and our maleness in a shared setting. And to me, that's also the work of the warlock, is to really kind of focus on, well, what does it mean to be a man who practices witchcraft? Now, I will also say, there's a lot of female imagery in the craft, and that's obviously not a bad thing. But it can, in some circles, it can certainly be dominating. I've often been asked, well, how do you feel to be in a woman-dominated religion? And I will say that hasn't often been my experience, although sometimes it has. I've certainly been in spaces where it's very apparent that, oh, there's actually misandry going on here. And nobody likes to talk about that because there is so much misogyny that happens just in the larger world. I mean, there's so much misogyny that happens in the larger world that when misandry happens in our small little craft, people don't even want to say that it exists because somehow that's still keeping women down. But I've often seen women who are very much anti-male. And I'm not even going to say that I don't understand that. Right. Because again, there's so much misogyny in the larger world. You know what? If you're a woman and you feel like you have to be anti-male to get through in this world, I'm not going to tell you you're wrong. I don't think necessarily you're always right, but I'm not going to tell you you're wrong because that you're living your lived experience. But I'm trying to live my lived experience, and my lived experience tells me it's important for me to embrace what masculinity is and to redefine what masculinity is, because we are given such an image of toxic masculinity. And still I see people saying, oh, toxic masculinity doesn't exist, which is the most toxic masculine statement that could ever be uttered.
Right.
But it does exist. And so for me, embracing warlock is a magical solution to that toxic masculinity. It's an opportunity for me to fully embrace my masculinity and redefine what it is outside of the patriarchal confines, but also fully center my witchcraftness as well, to make it a word. So I love the word warlock. It's a word of power. It rubs a lot of people the wrong way, which is a hallmark of a word of power. Let's talk about the word witch. It rubs a lot of people the wrong way. And for a long time, before the modern witchcraft movement was a thing, people used the word witch as a synonym for an ugly old woman. You don't really hear that being used so much like that today. because our
Not as
sisters have
much. I mean,
reclaimed the word.
it still exists, but not as much
It
as.
still exists, but it's not
Yeah.
like it was before. It wasn't even
Yeah.
questioned before.
Yeah.
And but because of the work of our sisters, they have done a lot of work to reclaim that word.
Mhm.
And so I'm part of a movement to help to start to reclaim the word warlock for the same reasons, right? But I've noticed it's pissed off a lot of people. I would get a lot of flack, mostly from women who were telling me that, like, oh, well, if you're doing this, it's just, you're just separating the genders, right? And I'm like, well, no, I'm using it as an opportunity to explore my own gender, and again, I'm not telling other people that they have to use this term. It doesn't need to be universal, but this is what I'm doing it. I'm doing it for a very good reason. And I'm also right. The word warlock does mean a male witch. You could argue that it doesn't mean that, but you're wrong. Pick up a dictionary. I don't know why pagans today feel that like their beliefs somehow trump the dictionary or trump the laws of language. I'm like, really? Come on, it doesn't work that way. We're such a small group of people. Language is democratic. It will change. Words change meaning all the time. The word girl, that didn't used to mean a female child. That used to mean a child of either sex. But that's not how it's used today. The word decimate, we use that today to mean, to destroy, to leave things wasted. It used to mean to like to give up like 10% of something. Decimate.
Oh, decimate. Yeah. That makes sense.
So there's a lot of words. Some words are the opposite now.
Yeah.
The word brave used to mean cowardice.
Oh, I didn't know that. Interesting.
And so many, but people don't bring that up. Somehow it's just the word warlock. Apparently it just needs to live in its own little world with its own little rules and actual etymology be damned.
Yeah.
It was also in the craft talked about that warlock was someone who betrayed their coven.
Yeah.
This is just made up.
Yes.
Nobody's using it that way, other than maybe a few ill-informed modern pagans, but that doesn't actually exist.
Yeah, I think modern pagans saw that, oathbreaker, historical context of warlock and be like, oh, well, and, someone, pissed them off. They kicked them out of the coven. They're like, oh, he's a warlock. He betrayed his coven.
Yeah.
Oathbreaker, betrayer, it makes sense. And and
it's so funny to me, like the whole oathbreaker thing. I'm like, what, are we living in Game of Thrones? Well, what is this?
I know.
If you don't think that I'm honest, then call me a liar. But if you're saying an oathbreaker, I'm just feeling like, what, are you going to roll a D20 next in order to really drive it home? I don't get it. You're not as cool as you think you are. When you're making these arguments, like, okay, whatever.
Yeah.
But I get a lot of hate mail.
Do you really? Just because of warlock?
Yes, I totally do.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, and other things too, but I do, for a warlock thing.
I just don't understand how people that self-identify as witch can turn around and be so down on someone for using the term
excuse me.
It doesn't make sense to me. It just, and if you go back, into, history, into pre-Christian, pagan times, the word witch wasn't synonymous with, priestess of Athena or priestess of Isis. Read some Greek literature, like ancient Greek, and witch is the black magic spell casting woman. So you've reclaimed the word witch. You've changed its meaning, because I've never seen a historical example of witch being a positive term, even in ancient pagan history.
Yeah, that's new.
Yeah,
that's new.
And
that's okay.
Yeah, you've reclaimed and transformed the word witch So why can't someone do the same with the word warlock?
Yeah.
You know, like it,
and one of the things that I was told is, oh, again, about like the separating the genders. This was an argument that was specifically told to me by women.
Mm.
And these same women would often use the term priestess to describe themselves. And I'm like, well, aren't you separate? Aren't you doing something that's gender specific then?
Yeah.
You're calling yourself, you're a witch, you're a priestess.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm a warlock, I'm a priest. I don't see what the problem is.
Yeah.
But it rubs people the wrong way because they're not used to it.
Yeah.
And because they were told certain things and they just accepted it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, there's things that I was told that I just accepted. And then it was like years later, I'm like, oh, I never even thought to question that.
Yeah.
You know, there's stuff about like the fairy tradition that like when I was training, I just accepted it because that's what my teacher told me. And, you know, I didn't feel necessarily that I had to research it further than that. And then as a teacher, I'm seeing the material from the other direction, you know, basically. And sometimes I would have these questions like, oh, I don't know where this came from, or why is this a certain way? And,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe a student would ask me and I'm like, wow, I never thought of that. I never thought to question it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But my job now is to question it. You know, I think we should question everything.
Absolutely.
But the first thing we have to question is our own assumptions. But that's hard because we don't necessarily know that we've made these assumptions. It's just part of our psychic foundation, right? And so something has to come to us to make us specifically examine it. And so that's another reason why I use the word warlock so publicly, because it does challenge people,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and it also challenges me. I have to be on my toes. I have to explain it, you know, and so I've written articles on it. I'll often give people like links or whatever. But even just recently, like I just had a 1-star review for one of my books on Amazon. And I think the title of the review was Warlock, with a big question mark. And I will often hear, oh, I can't take him seriously because he calls himself a warlock. Or I can't take him seriously because he calls himself Storm Faerywolf. Okay, well then you're not going to take me seriously. I'm really not going to lose any sleep over it.
Yeah.
I wasn't asking you to take me seriously. Half the time I don't take me seriously. That's okay. I like I said earlier in the interview, we need to make friends with silly.
Yeah.
And all of it's ridiculous. Yeah, whatever. But it's also powerful. And it's helped me to gain confidence and power and authority within my craft. And so those are good things. So again, it's like a spell. You know, language is magical.
Yeah.
How we use it is powerful.
Yeah.
Words carry power.
Yeah. I mean,
and warlock is a very powerful word.
Yeah. And I understand people being a little uncomfortable with the term just because, like, I mean, you know, I'm thinking back to to all of my books from the 90s and, oh, a male witch isn't a warlock because warlock is a bad term, blah, 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 blah. A male witch is witch. So I get, you know, where people be like, oh, I'm uncomfortable with that term. But I guess I shouldn't be surprised, but I am surprised. You know, like you saying, like it pisses people off and the hate mail that you get, that kind of surprises me. That genuinely, you know, kind of surprises me that people, you know, would go to that kind of lengths over the word.
I mean, it surprised me in the beginning, but I mean, it's certainly happened enough now where it's no longer a surprise. It's just like, I'm going to roll my eyes. But at this point, if I rolled my eyes every time it happened, they'd probably roll right out of my head.
Right.
You know, so it's just absurd.
Yeah.
You know, and when I say hate mail, I'm talking mostly like email and social messages.
Yeah.
But every once in a while, I do actually get a handwritten rant, you know, mailed to my PO box. And then I just have to say, well, you know, I got to hand it to you. You know, who sends handwritten letters anymore? It may be filled with like craziness and whatever, but hey, more power to you.
Yeah.
You know, you actually put pen to paper, you know, and you actually did something real. I don't agree with what you did, but whatever.
And you're supporting the economy because you bought a stamp and an envelope. So there you go.
There you go. Exactly. So it's not all bad.
So thank you so much. That's funny. God, that's weird though. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of, obviously, I mean, we're talking about people and I mean, we're all fallible no matter how much, you know, magical training, spiritual training. I don't care what your title is and whatever tradition or order you belong to. At the end of the day, we're people, we're fallible. But the level of hypocrisy in our community is just truly astounding. Truly, truly astounding. And it's
that's
so much.
I will say,
apparent.
I mean, it's both sad and also strangely reassuring to know that this is not a problem that is unique to the pagan and witchcraft communities.
Mm-hmm.
Devin and Chaz have been, as we spoke earlier, really into the whole houseplant thing, and we're selling houseplants and everything. And so they're part of many different social media groups about houseplants. And let me tell you, those groups are just as bad.
Oh, I believe
when it comes to weird dogma, weird politics, it's just absurd to me, and I'm like, but then it was like, oh, wow, okay. It's not just our groups, it's not just witchcraft. It's not just the occult, whatever. It's just humans.
It's just,
and not that I want to sound jaded, but like a lot of humans suck.
Yeah.
A lot of humans just talk out their butt. They have no idea what they're just spewing stuff that has no basis in reality.
Well, it's so easy to do now.
Superior all the time.
With the internet, with social media, it's so easy to do now. So, might as well.
Everybody's an expert.
Yeah.
Everybody did their own research.
Yep. Yeah, right. Yeah. I joined a Facebook.
That's going to be one of my Halloween decorations, I think, by the way, in my front yard. I'm going to have a tombstone that says, I did my own research.
I love it. Yeah. I love it. I joined a Facebook group. I know more than the scientists now. You sure do.
Right? Oh my God.
Yes.
Yeah, you got your doctorate off of YouTube.
Yes, you do.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Oh, I can't believe it. Okay, so one question that I ask everyone on here that is an author is, what made you decide to start writing books? Like, so at some point in your life, you had the thought pop in your head, like, I have something to say and people need to hear it, so I'm going to write a book. So how does that?
The people need to hear it part. That's tough for me. I don't know if I had the whole people need to hear it, because that's an ego thing that I actually try to work against these days. I try to remind myself, not everybody needs to know what Faerywolf has to say about
it. But there's a level of ego involved with doing anything public, whether it's writing a book or
absolutely. But I was always a writer. I was always an artist. When I was in probably junior high school is when I really started to figure out that, hey, I'm a good writer, right? And I would be able to ace quizzes, essay. If it was an essay, whether I read the book or not, I was going to get an A.
Right.
And there were many times like it did like an essay book report on a book I did not read.
Mm-hmm.
And I was still able to get an A because I was a good writer, so, and that's one thing I know about myself. I'm a good writer, and I love writing, and I love writing prose. I love writing poetry. For me, even if I'm writing an informative article, a lot of it is about how do the words sound to me, and so I will read it aloud. How does it sound? And so that's very important to me. So I knew that words were definitely part of just my power.
Yeah.
And I just loved writing. It wasn't until 1999 that I really started to put more of my writing out there. And I kind of credit that with my training in Anderson Ferry. I got what has variously been called a dedication rite around that time. And the result of which was it kind of, for lack of a better term, uncorked my creativity. It also helped me to face my fear about sharing my creative works. And so that's when I started my website, faerywolf.com. And so I started putting just essays and poetry. And then later I started doing some digital art in Photoshop. Actually, first it was Microsoft Paint, but then later Photoshop. And it was all like, spirits and deities of fairy tradition mostly and whatever. And it was really an opportunity for me to kind of work through and deepen those connections on a personal level. And I didn't originally have the intention of sharing it with anybody. But then I realized the reason I wasn't sharing it is because I was scared to share it.
Mm.
And so part of my training in fairy was a big chunk of it was about facing one's fears. And so I decided, oh, I have to face this fear. That means I have to put it out there. So I started the website, and I've had it ever since. It's really in bad need of an update right now, actually, but I'll get there. But yeah, just one thing led to another. I would always write articles and stuff. I have a bunch of stuff for free up on that website. And people would always ask me, oh, when's your book coming out? When's your book coming out, right? When are you going to write a book? Oh yeah, one day. But I'm also Pisces. And so it was like, oh, I have all these things going on and I'm not organized and maybe one day I'll get to it and blah, blah, blah. And then finally, in 2003, I forced myself to actually self-publish a book, The Stars Within the Earth. And that is a book of poetry. It's got a few spells in there too, and a couple black and white pieces of my art. And that was really just to make me do it. You know, right. I was like, well, I have to get this over with, you know, so to speak. And I was just kind of filled with this drive that I had to make it happen. So I did that. And then later on, I self-published a collection that I edited, because I actually for a while was the editor of a zine called Witch Eye, which was it started as a zine of fairy uprising. And then later when it was given to me, I transformed it into a journal. And so it became like a full-size color magazine. And that's been defunct now for, you know, several years, but that gave me some good experience in self-publishing. And then I did a book that was a collection of authors from the magazine Witch Eye. And then I wrote 3 small books on the 3 levels of Reiki. Okay. And that was because I'm a Reiki master and I was sick of printing up all these handouts like for every class. And I thought, well, if I just make books, it'll be easier and it'll look better, you know? Yeah. So there you go. And then I had the opportunity to write for Llewellyn. And I will say that came about because my partner, Devin, he's kind of a little bit of a go-getter. He's got that Sagittarian fire energy, and he's really good at starting projects and kind of getting things started. And so he was like, this is what you're going to do. We're at PantheaCon. Llewellyn has a thing where you can go and pitch to them. At this time, you're coming with me. We're going to go do it. And I was like, okay. So I went and I made my pitch for what became Betwixt in Between. My intro, you know, my foundational work on the fairy tradition, Anderson fairy tradition. And really it was the rest of that was history. You know, I had a really great time working with Llewellyn. The editing process was great. And I think the book turned out really well. And then on the heels of that, the following year, I came out with the second in that series, Forbidden Mysteries of Fairy Witchcraft. And so I don't know, it just kind of, I just feel like I'm in the groove. This is where I'm supposed to be.
Right. Yeah.
You know? And for a while, I felt like where I was supposed to be was leading large public rituals. And I would love to be able to get back to that one day. But now that we're in the middle of the pandemic, it's nice to have something that I can actually just do from home.
Yeah.
And I'm also teaching classes. I teach classes on Zoom and through, we have private Discord servers. And so I've been teaching long distance, folk magic and fairy tradition for many years now, and perfectly suited actually for life in the pandemic. So I kind of feel like these things just sort of, I don't know, lined up nicely for me and gave me an opportunity to be able to continue to do what I love, even though so many things are shutting down and we don't have life as normal. Yeah. I will say I feel very blessed because I have a good living situation. I've got, you know, 3 other people that live in the house with me. We have enough space to where we can escape each other and close the door and be private, or we can hang out, you know, so I feel very blessed. And all of us are witchcraft authors, all 4 of us. Yeah. You know, we all have books through Llewellyn, you know, so I'm talking about obviously my husband, Chaz Bogan, and then my partners, Devin Hunter and Matt Oren. Together, we are house forlocks, you know, as it's been said. And it's a really, we're having a really good time. It's stressful, of course, because everything's crazy in the world. but we're really able to support one another, and we have enough obviously shared interests to where we can, really kind of work together, but we also have our own individual interests that really help to inspire and kind of keep things fresh and new.
Yeah.
So I don't know, I just feel really blessed. But yeah, the writing thing, I'm just loving it. I love writing books. I have some ideas for my next few books, so I'm certainly not done, but I have 2 that are coming out early next year. And I mentioned them earlier, but the Witch's Name comes out in March of 2022, and then The Satyr's Kiss comes out in May. And so yeah, definitely trying to promote those pre-sales right now, make sure they get as good as they can get. So,
and they're both up for pre-sale right now. Pre-order.
The Witch's Name, yes, actually they are through Amazon. They're both available for pre-order right now. The Witch's Name is also available pre-order on Llewellyn's website, and The Satyr's Kiss will soon be up, I'm told, on Llewellyn's website for pre-order. And so that would really be for merchants. If merchants wanted to pre-order, you're going to go to the Llewellyn website to do that. But Satyr's Kiss should be up there soon. But for the individual, if you'd like to just buy a book, and if you'd like to support me in my work, pre-ordering those books would really be helpful, because that does a lot for the overall life of a book. And then other than that, also, if you like any of my books, it would be really helpful if you said so, on Amazon and or Goodreads, especially Goodreads, because that's a tough audience. Let me tell you, my ratings are low. Everybody's ratings seem to be lower on Goodreads than they are on Amazon, because those you get the real critics. So I'm just asking everyone, if you've read my books and if you like them, please give me a favorable rating, especially on Goodreads, but also on Amazon if possible, because it really does help. And especially for those of us who are actually making our living from this. I don't have a regular mundane job. I sell magical stuff, and I teach classes, and I write these books, and that's how I eat. So it would be really nice if people, if you actually like my work, I'm not going to ask anyone to lie, but if you actually like my work, I would love it if you could say so, because it
but I mean, if you don't leave a review, period, because we don't want.
Obviously that's what I'd like.
Reviews.
Although some of the 1-star reviews I find delightful.
Are the best reviews. Like I find the 1-star reviews tend to be the best advertising for books, like Laura for her Sigil Witchery book.
Laura Tempest Sakroff.
Just posted a 1-star review. Someone
saying because it's haunted.
A book is haunted, and I could literally, I opened it up. I could literally hear screaming from the book. If I didn't already own that book, I would have been like, "Click, I'm buying," because I want to open up a book and hear screams from the pits of hell. I mean, how
I know, right?
Fantastic.
That's kick-ass marketing.
Yeah.
That's the kind of marketing that they don't want you to do on eBay anymore, right? Like, oh, the haunted object.
Exactly.
Right. There's a bunch of stuff like that. Oh my God, that's just golden. Yeah, that was great.
And The Satyr's Kiss, a couple of weeks ago, you were talking about, you were like, oh my God, the cover for Satyr's Kiss is amazing. I can't wait for you guys to see it. It was for that book, right?
Yeah. They hadn't given me the cover yet. And so, well, they had given me a version that couldn't be publicly shown yet. And that's usually how it works. They give you kind of a mock-up. Yeah. And then I responded. They have to do their licensing and stuff.
Yeah. And then I responded to your post saying, oh, yeah, you can't show it because you're going to wait until the podcast to show it off. So why don't you hold it up right now? I'm just kidding. Hold it up.
I would say I don't have anything physically to hold.
I'm just teasing,
because there's no book yet. But yeah, I wish. But now it's, of course, I don't know. I'm sure you saw it since then, because I did post it.
Oh no, later, I haven't, or have I seen it? Maybe I have.
It's on Amazon. You can see it. It's not the best version on Amazon, but and you can see it on my Twitter feed. If you go, I'm at Storm Faerywolf.
Yeah.
On Twitter.
The past couple of weeks I haven't been very as active on social media as I know. Not like I'm really active on social media anyways, but I haven't been as active as normal the past couple of weeks, I've just been so crazy busy with all of these orders that, you know, like if I've gone a couple of days without posting to like Instagram or Twitter, it's because I literally am working like 14 hours a day here in my ritual room and doing nothing but making product and packing up orders. Ooh, do I get to? Okay, can I just click on this and open it?
I'm hoping. Yeah, I just sent you the cover.
Potential security issue detected. Okay, let's see.
Technology.
Okay, so well, oh, it's saving. Okay, so oh.
Yeah, I don't know if you could show it or not, but anyway, just so you know, I'm really happy with the cover. Yeah, it's a really nice, they did a really good job. I'm really happy with it. The colors are nice, and there's an image of a shirtless man from the back, and he's got his arms open, and looks like he's praying or invoking in front of a wispy blue energetic pentacle, and it looks really good.
Nice.
I'm very pleased.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's up on I have up as a pinned tweet on my Twitter profile, so you can actually go there, and then and it also has my affiliate Amazon links for the pre-orders for both The Witch's Name and The Satyr's Kiss. So if anybody wants to get those books, pre-order those books, you can go to my Twitter profile. I'm at Storm Faerywolf. That's FAERYWOLF at Storm Faerywolf, and my pinned tweet has both of those covers and the Amazon affiliate links for you to pre-order. So excellent. I'm hoping that maybe I could sell a couple books.
Yeah,
as well.
I'm going to put all of your links in the show notes as well, so people will be able to just click on the links in the show notes. So that'll definitely be helpful. Absolutely.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
So where else do we want people to go online to discover Storm Faerywolf? So you have Twitter. Do you have are you on Instagram? Do I follow you?
I am. I'm on Instagram and Facebook. Yeah. I don't do a lot there. I will post, obviously, the odd bathtub selfie, on Instagram, or my book covers and stuff like that. And if I think about it, I'm just not organized when it comes to that. And I don't like Facebook and the company.
Yeah.
And so I'm not a fan, but I kind of am on Facebook just because I have to promote, stuff. But really, I'm active on Twitter.
Yeah.
And that's the big thing. But yeah, you can find me there. You can go to my website, faerywolf.com, and that should have links to most of the stuff. I'm mostly active on Twitter.
Yeah.
And I do have a TikTok, but I've never posted a single thing. And I don't even watch the witch TikTok stuff. I'm mostly just watching like funny videos. That's right. Part of my self-care, relax, get out of my head. I'm going to watch, people do funny skits and whatever, and that's my speed right now. Who knows if that'll change later.
I'm not on TikTok. The only witch talk videos I see is if like people will then like post them to Twitter, and they're all pretty horrific. So yeah, you're not missing.
Yeah, you see all the big stuff on Twitter anyway, but that's whatever, it's okay.
Yeah, so I don't.
But yeah, you could also. I have our store. We actually just rebranded. We were the Mystic Dream, for many years, and you can still get there by going to themysticdream.com. But we've rebranded. We are now Datura Trading Company, and so you can go to daturatrading.com, and that will give you. That's our online store, and so obviously plants, live plants. Crystals, a lot of different tumbled stones, crystal specimens. We sell a lot of magical products that we do ourselves. We sell dress candles, blessed bath salts, herb blends, conjure oils, hand poured candles, a lot of other stuff too. And our stock often changes. I'm about to come out with my own line of bath products. And so I'm really excited about being able to unveil that. There's going to be lots of stuff. There's like foaming soap, and there's going to be magical bubble bath and lotion. We're going to do some beard oil. We're doing some stuff for the guys. So I'm really looking forward to being able to unveil all of that very soon. Awesome. But yeah, all that'll be on Datura Trading. faerywolf.com.
Awesome. That's fabulous. I love it. That's a
as
great,
well as signed books. All of us have
Mhm.
our signed books, except for Matt. Matt actually isn't part of the business. And so I don't think he's selling his books on his own right now, his signed copies, but the rest of us you can find, and we'll probably get his on Datura Trading at some point too. But yeah, you can come and see all the stuff that we offer.
That's awesome.
And
That's a sexy name, Datura Trading Company. I like that.
Thank you. Yeah, there's a lot of Datura that just grow wild around where we live, just on the side of the road. And I've always been drawn to the plant as a witchy plant.
Yeah.
And we actually, for many years, have grown Brugmansia, which is part of the Datura family. And in a general nutshell, the Brugmansias are the ones where the bellflowers hang down. And so they're often called angels' trumpets, because it's like, oh, the angels from heaven are singing down. Well, the Daturas are the devil's trumpets, right? They're the ones that the bells come up. And so now my backyard is just filled with both Brugs and Daturas.
I love it.
It's so nice, actually. And we just started seeing hummingbird moths, coming in at night. I've never seen one.
Yeah.
But now that we've got all these Daturas everywhere, hummingbird moths are showing up, and they look like hummingbirds at night.
Yeah.
Really neat. Just really neat.
That's awesome. That's exciting.
I love our witchy suburbs house.
Yeah, I love it. That's awesome. Fantastic. Well, I guess that's that, unless you have anything else you want to say. Anything else you want to promote?
I don't know. I feel like I've said a lot. The one thing I guess I will promote is, because I haven't talked about it at all, is we do have an online school where we do teach different magical and spiritual paths, including
I don't know how we didn't get there already with this.
There's so much to talk about, right?
Yeah.
But you can check that out at modernwitchuniversity.com. We actually just rebranded that as well. So modernwitchuniversity.com. And there you can find our big class, of course, is BlueRose Witchcraft, which is it's based on a year-long curriculum. It'll never be less than a year, but you can take as long as you like because it's really self-paced. It's 13 months. And to pay for the whole thing up front, it's $250. Or you could do a monthly subscription, which is $25 a month for 12 months. And actually, if our listeners, want to try it out, you could get the first month free by using the discount code Magister. That's MAGISTER. And that will give you 1 month free. And so you can kind of dip your witchy toes into the water and see if it's something you like. But it is on one level an intro to witchcraft, but it's not your basic Wicca. It draws from Wicca, it draws from folk magic, it draws from sabbatic craft, it draws from fairy tradition, and draws from psychic development. So there's a lot of different things woven in, but the three of us, Chaz Bogan, Devin Hunter, and myself, came up with the curriculum, and it's been going strong for 6+ years. And we've had, we're now at over 700 members. And that's everybody. That's not necessarily active. We have over 200 active members right now who are on our Discord. And so those are actually people who are active in the community, taking the class and or mentoring, other people in the class. But we've had over 700 people go through, and
awesome.
We do offer the possibility of an initiation. It's actually a group trance journey that I offer over Zoom for those people who have completed the course and who have completed the course requirements. And it's really just a trance journey to help to activate or augment one's witch power. And so there's more you could read about that. If you go to modernwitchuniversity.com, you could read all about that. You could read about my Reiki classes. And we have, there's a spiritual cleansing class. Devin has the witch power master class. My husband and I wrote a course on modern conjure. So for conjure tradition work, you can take that there as well. And we have some other stuff that's about to be unveiled, hopefully in the next few weeks.
Awesome.
So check it out, modernwitchuniversity.com.
Fantastic. Well, this was the perfect way to spend an afternoon, Storm. I really appreciate it. Absolutely.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me on. It's been lovely.
Yeah, this was a lot of fun.
Thank you.
So, just to say again for the listeners, all of those links, and I'll put that discount code as well. So all of the links, that discount code will be in the show notes, so it'll be easier for the listeners to just click and go to the websites and your social media and start following you. And definitely, yeah, if you can get a free month and check it out, then, yeah, why don't you just, take that discount code, give it a try. Why not?
I appreciate it. Thank you. Yeah,
Absolutely.
please.
Absolutely. And then, of course, there's a link there in the show notes as well to get you to my website, all my social media, the Lux Files social media, all that good stuff. And all my regular listeners will already know that and will be sick of hearing me say that. But
gotta keep it going.
The name of the game.
Keep reminding people.
Yeah, the name of the game is self-promotion.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
So again, thanks again, Storm, and for the listeners for listening, and until episode 28. Bye now.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Lux Files. You'll find all the guest links in the show notes, as well as the link www.leilokanzawin.com/links. That link will get you to my page of links, where you can then go to my Leilo Kanzawin website, the Lux Files page, and my Leilo Kanzawin YouTube channel that has all the Lux Files videos. It also has all my social media links there, so you can follow me and the Lux Files. And don't forget to subscribe to the Lux Files wherever you get your podcasts. And lastly, if you enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving me a review. Until next time.